Welcome everybody to the SAP Garage series, December episode, December 1st. Happy December, everybody. Delighted to have Thomas Hammer with us today, Lead Product Manager, SAP HANA Cloud. And Thomas is going to be walking us through his HANA Cloud mission for you. But before we get to today's mission, myself, Chris Aaron, I wanted to share with you some of the feedback that you guys gave us as part of our recent survey. So as you may know, we started this series in May of this year, and this represents the 8th episode. So here is, the inventory of the different sessions that we've done. So as part of our survey, we wanted to hear back from you in terms of what you thought of the Garage series that we've done so far, and input for 22 as we start planning next year. So we got about 100 survey results, so we really appreciate your feedback. And as you can see, you're all very kind, at least the ones who submitted the survey, that you're very satisfied with the series. And then you can see that the bulk of people have attended more than one webinar. So I think that means they were regarded as experts, right? They knew about the Garage series and what it entailed. So we achieved our primary objective, which was helping with the Discovery Center missions. And so that's great feedback. And as we look at 22, we'll continue to do Discovery Center showcases and look to cover as many as we can. And then in terms of sessions that people would like to see in the future, you can see the integration suite was by far the biggest request. So we will endeavor to do that. And then we obviously wanted to get feedback on the length. And so you can see that most people prefer the 60-minute length. So we will keep it to this format as we move forward next year. But we will obviously do other topics besides integration, but just to reflect that we'll try and respond to that request specifically. There was lots of feedback, and so we thank you for that. You can see that people would like goodies. They would like to see previews of new and upcoming services. They'd like to see recommended use cases, more focus on customer use cases. So we will endeavor as we put together the sessions next year to incorporate this feedback and try and have some of these items represented. I wanted to let you know that next month's session will be on low code, no code, but because of the end of year holidays, we're going to move the January session to January 12th. So that'll be the second Wednesday of the year. And then moving forward in February, we'll move back to the first Wednesday of the month. So just wanted to highlight that we'll be doing low code, no code on January 12th. One final plug, Taurus and I will be hosting 2 interactive coffee corners next week. The first one on December 8th around integration, and then on December 9th, one around intelligent technologies, so workflow, RPA, business rules. The idea is there's a panel of experts, and you're able to ask questions, get your questions answered. So Taurus has already put the registration page up, and you're able to ask your questions ahead of time. So that's helping shape the panel discussion, but you'll also have the opportunity to ask live questions as well. So that'll be next Wednesday, December 8th for integration, and next Thursday, intelligent technologies. And we'll be doing, like we do for the Garage, 2 slots, one for the APJ region and then one for Europe and the Americas. So we hope you can join us for that next week. So without further delay, I want to bring it to Thomas. As you know, every month we showcase a Discovery Center mission, and so you can find this mission, today's mission, on the Discovery Center. We encourage you to start the mission if you haven't started it already. And Thomas, he's going to, over the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes, give you sort of a showcase of this mission, give you some step-by-step guidance and some highlights in terms of the mission structure. So thank you very much for listening to my opening remarks, and I'll stop sharing and hand it over to Thomas.
Thanks a lot, Christopher. Thanks for introducing me and also the mission and what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here, to have the chance now also to present our latest mission about SAP HANA, and to be more specific about the SAP HANA database as part of SAP HANA Cloud. This is one of the brand new missions that we have in the Discovery Center. There is another one that I will highlight later on as well. It's definitely also worth having a look at, and which has just recently been released and is now available for you also to try out and to discover and to walk through. Now, during the remaining time today, I definitely want to, let's say, outline a few of the basic concepts of SAP HANA Cloud. I will do that primarily, first of all, independent of the mission, but when you walk through the mission, you will basically see a lot of these concepts being highlighted and explained. So we will not look at the detailed content in the mission. First of all, we will later on then dive into the mission, but I want to give you the fundamentals about SAP HANA Cloud and the SAP HANA database first, independent of the mission. Now, let me talk briefly about HANA Cloud. So for those of you who haven't heard about the product before, or have heard about it but don't know what it really delivers or what the main value is of the product and how it differentiates maybe or how it differs from other HANA versions or products that we've been delivering in the past. HANA Cloud is truly our latest database as a service solution that we're offering from SAP. And the way the service is being delivered is as a fully managed service. That means you as a customer are no longer required to perform specific activities, especially taking a look at the provisioning of the database service, and also the management of the stack basically underneath of the database system. So everything related to hardware configuration, maintenance, selection, but also operation system management are things that we as SAP take care of. We'll have a picture on that in just a few more moments. That gives a bit more detail on like what's the responsibilities that SAP is taking care of and what's the responsibilities that a customer still needs to take care of, and how that then of course compares, for instance, to the SAP HANA platform on premises. But key is that SAP HANA Cloud is a managed database service within the BTP environment. So for everyone who's used to working with a BTP, the service can be consumed within the BTP cockpit, and over there also, of course, being configured and be accessed, same as other services within the BTP environment. And that is also one of the, let's say, core values of SAP HANA Cloud. It comes integrated with many other BTP applications and technologies and services as well. So for instance, thinking about user authentication and authorization, this is a big topic for us, of course, here, maintaining the best possible integration with the BTP environment. But still, SAP HANA Cloud, of course, as the name already kind of suggests, is benefiting from all the great HANA benefits that we are all used to. So the main service within SAP HANA Cloud is and will, of course, remain the SAP HANA database, being our in-memory storage technology, being complemented with our multi-model capabilities, so the capabilities in terms of storing totally different kinds of data and processing them in a specialized and very efficient manner using the in-memory technology, also having machine learning capabilities embedded, and all of that within just one single system within one single database service. That is basically SAP HANA and still our main component. And that's what we want to focus on today. But we will also want to take a look at the other components with the next upcoming slide. Now, when delivering a managed database service in the cloud, we of course can benefit from a lot of cloud technologies and a lot of cloud benefits for our customers as well. On the one hand side, of course, we're benefiting ourselves in the way how we can operate the service, very automated and very streamlined. But all that, like the high degree of automation that is behind the operations model of HANA Cloud, in the end ties back to the total cost of ownership for our customers, and also the, let's say, the qualities he's in the end able to experience. And the qualities are very specifically about system availability, increased elasticity, and also the flexibility you have in terms of how much data you want to consume and how much capacity you want to reserve. And that these qualities apply for all the components within HANA Cloud, not just the HANA database. And that leads me to the third bullet here on the slide, which is data on demand. So with HANA Cloud and these flexible technologies and also the architecture, we have the possibility to, let's say, scale in terms of the capacity available to store data. We do that via multiple means. I'll highlight that briefly on another slide as well, so you can see on how we envision to provide a very highly scalable environment for our customers with SAP HANA Cloud. As mentioned earlier, SAP HANA Cloud is a component of the BTP. That means you can consume SAP HANA Cloud via commercial models of the BTP, but you can also, let's say, rely on the fact that the service is best in class integrated with BTP solutions. And that allows a streamlined access from different services to SAP HANA Cloud, but also within SAP HANA Cloud, we provide easy integration technologies to, for instance, external data stores. So this has been a core capability of HANA already on premises, but now moving that service into the cloud, of course, we're opening up the possibilities also in terms of the connectivity to cloud solutions, because that becomes to a large degree easier and more demanded. And last but not least, of course, it's super important when developing or providing a database as a service solution that there is also a well-defined working model for our developer community of how they can make use of the service, how they can model artifacts, develop their applications and deploy them in the end within the BTP environment. And we have that, of course, also for SAP HANA Cloud, with the Business Application Studio being the de facto now, meanwhile, standard development environment for the business technology platform in SAP. Now, as I mentioned, during the mission that we're highlighting today, we're focusing on the HANA database, but the HANA database isn't just the only component within SAP HANA Cloud, because SAP HANA Cloud actually is let's say, a service of services. It consists of multiple database services that one can consume, mix and match depending on his scenario, in order to find the right fit for his scenario. So as mentioned, the core service, and that's what you can see here on the picture highlighted with that very striking one, is the HANA database, being our OLAP OLTP tool, as mentioned, with the in-memory technology as a foundation. Then the second component, and that may be familiar to some who used to work with SAP IQ before, is our data lake. Basically a relational storage technology that allows us to store and process large amounts of data, but still in a relational form. So it's not just an object storage solution, while we have meanwhile also combined it with a, let's say, almost limitless scalable file system storage technology on top. As said, it has some heritage with SAP IQ, so there is definitely some similarities in the service, and we have compatibility to the service as well. And therefore, it's interesting, especially also for these large-scale scenarios, and both can also work in combination. And then the third service that we can see in here is basically our Adaptive Server Enterprise. Same here, basically colleagues that used to work with, or customers that used to work with the SAP Adaptive Server Enterprise will find that quite interesting, because it's basically now the service being available in the cloud environment of SAP HANA Cloud as well. Here, purely or primarily focusing on transactional use cases. We sometimes call it extreme transactional, especially because we focus on a high, let's say, transactional processing capabilities with the service. And the last component that's being basically added in the picture here right next to the Adaptive Server Enterprise is component number 4, which is our application server. The reason for that being highlighted very close to each other is basically the replication server is a technology that is highly used by the Adaptive Server Enterprise, especially replicating data sources across multiple instances of the Adaptive Server Enterprise. And that kind of gives a picture what SAP HANA Cloud should represent. It represents one single product still. So it's not a, let's say, just a wrapper. It's really the ecosystem or the product itself that provides the technological foundations for all the database services. And within the product, we find different database services. And I've just called out all of the 3 and the replication server in addition. And now, as mentioned, we want to think a bit about when does it really make sense, maybe also to combining these different capabilities and these different services. And what we see on the right-hand side is basically what we refer to as the storage pyramid within SAP HANA Cloud. And from our perspective, we of course know there are scenarios that require a large in-memory storage and a large in-memory capability. But seeing customers moving to the cloud, we also see a more increasing demand and more requests of customers that are looking for, let's say, more of the cost-efficient storage technologies in combination with high-performance capabilities and technologies. And therefore, we believe that the combination of our in-memory database within SAP HANA and the data lake, in addition, is a great combination as such, because especially for the scenarios where there is, let's say, a higher requirement for data storage and data processing capabilities, and not necessarily a high demand for high performance computation, we believe that a data lake especially can take over these loads, as it is basically also storing and processing data on, let's say, more or less costly hardware in the end. The SAP HANA database still is, let's say, the powerhouse of our product, and it will remain the core engine of the solution, providing these in-memory capabilities, but of course at a higher cost. And therefore, customers can mix and match the both solutions. And for use cases and scenarios where it makes sense maybe to offload certain scenarios to the data lake, for instance, for historical data or for mass data processing and pre-filtering, it simply is a great value added if you have the possibility to move data out to the data lake or pre-process data over there first, and then pull, let's say, the relevant information back into the HANA database for the in-memory real-time data access. And this is, from our perspective, the way how the engines can be combined. Of course, there's also reasons for using the individual database services standalone. But this just as an example of how we believe, and also how we see, meanwhile, customers adopting these scenarios. Unfortunately, I haven't brought a customer example with me because I really wanted to focus on the mission. But maybe something we can deliver at a later point in time, highlighting some of the customer examples where customers exactly are using that combination of services. Actually, we do have these examples already on sap.com. So if you're curious about seeing how customers utilize SAP HANA Cloud and also the different services in combination, then there is great stories already being shared over there where you can see how this is being used in real life. In addition, what we see on the slide here on the left-hand side is also one thing that I want to mention, and that is also a clear differentiator from, let's say, using and consuming a pure database solution on your own infrastructure or on infrastructure provided by a cloud hyperscaler, instead of using a service like SAP HANA Cloud. Because with SAP HANA Cloud, we also follow the multi-cloud strategy of SAP means and of the BTP, and that means in every data center where the BTP environment is supported, we're also aiming to provide SAP HANA Cloud as a database service. And it's not just about data centers, it's basically about all the cloud service providers. So as you can see here in the picture, and this is already the reality, we're providing HANA Cloud on Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Alibaba Cloud, and Google Cloud. So at the point in time when you decide to start your cloud journey, you have the chance to decide which cloud hyperscaler and service provider you want to use as the foundation for your BTP and HANA Cloud environment. And then over there, you can find from my perspective, very extensive landscape of data centers and regions that are supported where SAP HANA Cloud can then in the end also run. Now, as mentioned earlier, I also wanted to briefly deep dive into the differences comparing let's say the most known version of HANA, so our SAP HANA on-premises version with SAP HANA Cloud, because it also shows the biggest difference in how the service is being operated, or also how the responsibilities have changed. So typically when you are running and maintaining and operating a database system on premises, and this doesn't necessarily only apply for SAP HANA, it basically applies for any sort of database system at that high level of abstraction, you as an operator or as an administrator would basically be required to take care of many activities related to the hardware selection, certification, testing, installation and configuration, but also for the operation system stack. Basically, the same applies here as well. So in the end, you would need to make sure that operation system and hardware are configured according to the requirements for the product, so that you can run the database system on top of that. And that typically already reflects a significant effort on the customer side. On the one hand side, it reflects effort, but it also reflects investment and therefore also, basically money that you can spend as an opportunity cost also in different needs. And of course, when investing into hardware, either like via infrastructure as a service providers or on premises, you always also have the challenge to keep all that hardware up to date in order to experience the best, let's say, performance and results from the services you're running. And this is definitely a challenge. And with HANA Cloud, that has changed. So now let's just talk about these two layers. So as you can see on the right-hand side with SAP HANA Cloud, we're basing a lot of the responsibilities, of course, on the services that we're also consuming from the cloud service providers, but also from the BTP and the services that our internal providers are delivering to us. And that gives us a great challenge that we cannot base HANA Cloud always on the latest and greatest hardware. We are very flexible in terms of reacting on system, let's say, outages or hardware outages. Means thanks to containerized technologies, we can make sure that the services are available about 99.995% of the time without doing any additional replication technologies or without applying them. Of course, we provide such with HANA Cloud as well, but this is just like as a side note. And so you can already see that, like, especially this very critical part about hardware and operation system security is something that SAP is taking care of in combination with the cloud hyperscaler. So here we already offload a lot of the responsibilities from customer side to SAP when one decides to go for SAP HANA Cloud. And now, as you can see here, also the responsibility for SAP HANA Cloud is also, or for the SAP HANA database within SAP HANA Cloud is also split between customer and SAP. And the reason for depicting that as a split responsibility is basically we take care of operating the system and making sure that the system is always available. Of course, the customer still has a remaining responsibility in terms of deciding how much system capacity he would like to provision, deciding on how he would like to run the service in terms of, are there any planned windows that he would like to turn the service, for instance, off, or is he basically applying a specific update pattern or a testing pattern that he would like to use with the database service as such. So these core responsibilities, to some degree, still need to be taken care of the customer. If the customer, for instance, is not interested in managing the updates himself, this is also something we're managing from our side. So we are having an update strategy for all the HANA Cloud systems. And in case a customer is not, let's say, is not concerned about the managing updates or is not concerned about the fact that we're managing the updates for him, then we would take care with the strategies that we have in place. And as you can see, there's already a big difference in the way the system typically would have been managed. And for, let's say, the majority of the management tasks that are still remaining, we either have tooling available that support you doing these operations, or we have self-services available that allow you to trigger the operations directly in the system, resulting in a very fast result for many of these operations. And if this isn't the case, then of course we have a service and operations team available that takes care of anything that a customer is not able to trigger himself directly, and is rather with us as being the operator of the services. And what didn't change, definitely, and that's also important to highlight, is the responsibility for the data and application layer. So still, our customers are responsible for managing the data layer, and that also ties back to monitoring how the available capacity is being used within the database. So meaning, for instance, if high utilization scenarios are approaching simply because you're storing more data, then it is the customer's responsibility to react. Of course, we're also tracking such situations on our end, and in worst case scenarios, we're reacting as well. But ideally, the customer is then stepping in and let's say, perform some corrective actions so that the system remains running. If you also want to avoid, for instance, such operations manually, then you can use APIs and services that we provide with HANA Cloud. So in HANA Cloud, we offer metrics and alerts and event-based mechanisms that allow you to then react on such situations, basically with a degree of automation. Within the BTP environment, for instance, we have the BTP Automation Pilot, which is a tool that allows you to automate certain activities. And one of these activities, for instance, can be that a HANA Cloud system is being scaled up automatically based on the utilization of the system. And that also, once again, shows the degree of integration between HANA Cloud and the BTP components. And now the last characteristica about the service that I want to mention, and I briefly touched base on that, that also differentiates HANA Cloud from the way an on-premises service in the past was being used, is the way the service is being priced and sold. As mentioned earlier, the product HANA Cloud is just a single product, while it consists of multiple services, but it gives you the possibility actually to let's say, use the service in a very flexible manner. Means if you decide to go for HANA Cloud, you basically decide for a certain a certain amount of cloud credits or capacity units in the end, and you can spend these capacity units independently on the different services. Means, for instance, if today you want to start with the HANA database first, then you can first of all spend your monthly capacity units on the HANA database. But if at a later point in time you have the feeling that you can benefit more from a combination of the data lake and the HANA database, then you can adjust the configuration according to your new needs and your new desires, and use the remaining capacity units that you have for that month or the new month with a different configuration. So basically the actual system configuration is no longer bound to the licensing model, and that makes it very flexible and easy, and also very transparent with you in terms of how you spend the credits and how this is being deducted from the bill. And in addition, we've integrated our capacity unit model, of course, also into the BTP Cloud Enterprise Agreement. So the Enterprise Agreement basically gives you the possibility to spend credits not just on single services, but on multiple services within the BTP. And here you now basically then have also the possibility not just to go for HANA Cloud, but also, let's say, to use the credits for other services as well, maybe in combination, but also totally decide for another service. So again, a degree of flexibility in a higher level, and that definitely differentiates the products as well. Now, coming closer to the mission, what I definitely also want to mention, because that is something we will see in a few minutes, is the tooling environment. These are two of the tools that many of you may be used to and have seen before, or even have worked with before, if you have HANA experience. And you can find these two tools definitely also, again, in SAP HANA Cloud. The one is the Database Explorer, which is basically our tool for executing SQL statements, for browsing catalog objects, for importing, exporting data, and for looking at trace files and managing, for instance, also remote connections. So more like the tool that you require to efficiently work with the data being stored in the database. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the SAP HANA Cockpit, which is basically our monitoring and administration tool that you can use to monitor, inspect the individual services, to take a look at admission control, sessions, thread execution, different workloads. You can define workload classes still, and have a look at the backups and also the performance of several other tasks. So this is the tooling environment that you will also experience when walking through the mission. And without further ado, let me start the mission and give you some idea of how we structured the mission, and also what we believe are some of the core fundamentals that you should definitely take a look at doing so. So let me briefly share my browser with you. Okay. So in here, you can see basically the starting point for the SAP HANA Cloud, SAP HANA Database Fundamentals mission. And the mission, as other missions, consists of multiple, let's say, pillars. When you access and start the mission, you first of all will experience a bit of explanation of what the mission is all about and what we try to explain. And to keep it very short, general with the mission, we want to give you a basic understanding about SAP HANA Cloud, what the service is all about, what it consists of. So everything that I just explained today already. And then, of course, we will put a bit of light on the difference between the different versions of HANA, comparing the on-premise version and the new version now with SAP HANA Cloud. And we suggest to start with the trial environment. And that's also the first step for me. So if you haven't worked with trial before, it's free of charge. So you can spin up your individual database systems in the trial environment, and these are available for up to a year, I believe, meanwhile. And they give you the possibility then to experience the service with your very own environment. When hitting the trial registration, sorry for that, let me just refresh. It's maybe a sign that I'm too slowly talking. Right, there you go. You can find the registration link for the trial environment, and that will bring you directly to the SAP HANA Cloud trial registration. So there is multiple different ways existing of how you can access the trial environment and also how you can sign up for the trial environment. The advantage of going via that link is that everything required for SAP HANA Cloud will be pre-configured already for you. And when I'm saying everything required, this is really like something about the core ways of how services are being entitled in the business technology platform. So all the, let's say, entitlements and all the quotas and everything you need in order to consume and to provision the service will be taken care of you. In addition, we will already provision a database instance. So that means you can start right away with using the service in the trial account. Now, when jumping into the trial account, what you first of all will face, and that's also will be explained in the Discovery Center mission, is the BTP environment. So if you haven't worked with the BTP before, then definitely you will find great advantage in reading the materials on, let's say, the BTP in general. Because in here we try to give you an understanding of the BTP cockpit, of the BTP account structure, how SAP HANA Cloud fits into that account structure, and where you can find and access SAP HANA Cloud. Being very short and crisp on that, so when you join or jump into the trial environment, you first of all start right within your global account. This is basically the highest level within the BTP cockpit. Typically, the global account is assigned to an organization or to an enterprise. And then you would normally start in a sub-account. Sub-accounts are used to separate accounts, also based on different regions. So here you can find sub-accounts in various different regions when you're working on with a productive environment. In the trial environment, there is no choice at the moment for which region you would like to pick. Simply also because there is no difference in terms of the functionality. So all the HANA Cloud instances behave totally the same in all the environments. And therefore, we have only one option in the US East on Amazon Web Services. If you then jump into that sub-account, you will find here a space, and spaces in the BTP environment and also in Cloud Foundry are basically the smallest entity of an operational space where you then develop your applications, deploy your applications, create new service instances, and work with these over time when running your projects. On the left-hand side here, you can already find quite striking a dedicated ribbon for SAP HANA Cloud. And once you hit that, you will see that there are two database instances are available, or two service instances available. The first one is a SAP HANA database, and the second one is a data lake instance attached to it. So when you sign up for trial, we automatically provision both. Means that you have the possibility to directly try out both and make yourself familiar with the tool. And the configurations that you can see in here are both standard and predefined for the trial environment. So you cannot adjust these configurations. And you also only have the possibility to provision one service instance per category. So one HANA database and one data lake, in case they are both already provisioned. If you walk through that link that I just highlighted, then both are already there, and there is no possibility for you to provision more instances, but we will go through the steps that you typically would walk through when provisioning a new service. Now, what's also new when working with HANA Cloud is the way we have structured the tooling and the way how you manage the database on a landscape level. And for managing the HANA Cloud services, including the HANA database and the data lake, we have introduced the so-called SAP HANA Cloud Central, which is basically our landscape level administration tool that gives you the possibility to perform dedicated operations already on that level without jumping further into, for instance, the HANA Cockpit or the Database Explorer. So in here, you have the possibility to see whether the services are up and running, if there are specific notifications available. You see the actual system configuration, and you have the possibility to now run certain actions with the services already. What's definitely important to mention is that all that options are available on the trial landscape. There are more options available, and these will be also described in the Discovery Center mission that aren't available here simply because of the fact we're working with a trial environment. So for instance, if you want to restore a backup, this is something you can already do over here. Or for instance, if you have a high availability configuration set up for your HANA database and want to trigger a takeover from one host to another, then this is also an action that you can find in here. But simply because of the fact that we're not supporting backups or high availability configurations in the trial environment, this is an option that you cannot find in here. So don't be confused about that. When you walk through the mission, you will find these information, and we will highlight some of the core administration tasks, as for instance, performing backups or restores, but you cannot perform that yourself in here in the trial environment. Now, what we also can find in here, and we were also able to see that also here with the actions, is then basically the link to the cockpit and the database explorer, and that's the two things that we now want to take a look at as well. So let me start the cockpit first and give you a very brief overview over the cockpit. And what you can see already here is basically the general database overview administration page that gives some insights into the service as such. So what you can see on the right-hand side, for instance, is the overall CPU utilization of the service that clearly indicates that we're looking at a monitoring and administration tool. Same as for the disk usage, you have the possibility to manage and inspect all the services that are running with HANA Cloud. And you have, of course, also the possibility to take a look at all the statements in terms of the execution time of single statements, for instance. That gives you a better idea of how to optimize certain statements, how they have been executed. We have specific tools and views available to monitor expensive date statements and many more such things. But as I said, it's not just about monitoring, it's also about administrating the database. And therefore, we have here, for instance, clearly the possibilities for user and role management. So the SAP HANA Cockpit is also the place where you create user roles, user privileges within the database or for the database service. And this is everything you require when you want to add database users natively. In addition to that, you can also find here, for instance, everything related to alerting and diagnostics. So the SAP HANA Cockpit is offering own alerting views or alert pages that show database and service alerts. But we also have an integration into the BTP here, for instance, into the alert notification service that can be used for multiple services, not just for HANA Cloud. But if you are a, let's say, core administrator for database services, then this is maybe the place where you will find all the information that you're looking for. And then, of course, we do have dedicated views. So if, for instance, monitoring, administration, security, and user management is specifically the topic that you want to look at, then we have, let's say, dedicated views for these purposes, where you can find like only a subset of all these pages. That makes it sometimes a bit easier to navigate from one page to another, because we then limit the number of views in here. As mentioned, I also want to give you a glimpse on the Database Explorer. And the Database Explorer, briefly repeating myself, is the tool for us to take a look at all the database artifacts that are available. So within the Database Explorer, you can browse all the database catalog objects. That's what you can see over here. You have the possibility to also connect adapters to remote sources. So for instance, when you're working with smart data integration or smart data access, you have the possibility in here to create remote connections and basically also set up everything to consume or to pull data from other sources right into HANA within SAP HANA Cloud. So that is available in here. And as you can see, we have different types of adapters available. So adapters for integrating with other HANA systems, for instance, with IQ, Athena, and many more. So this is everything that is provided via Smart Data Access. And of course, also these smart data integration technologies are available here to query and pull data right into HANA Cloud. And then, of course, you have the possibility to take a look at all the tables, views, and schemas being created. Same with like you have a SQL console environment that then gives you full SQL access to the database service in addition. And that is what the Database Explorer is all about. What you can see already here, and that is definitely important to mention, is that both tools, while they are being named SAP HANA Database Explorer and SAP HANA Cockpit, are not just serving the SAP HANA database within SAP HANA Cloud. So we have also integrated the administration capabilities for the data lake as well as for the other components into both of the tools, so into the Database Explorer and the Cockpit. And that makes it very easy to manage the services just from one single place. Now, when jumping back, I think I wanted to jump back to the Cloud Central. As mentioned in the beginning, the services, when you run through the trial registration, are already provided for you. But in case you are setting up your very own HANA Cloud instance, then you have the possibility to choose the individual components that you're interested in. Now, in this view, this is tailored on trial, and on trial, we don't have the Adaptive Server Enterprise available yet. So therefore, there's only these two components available. But let's now, for example, just pick the HANA database, and this view will, or this guide will basically tour you through the entire instance creation of an SAP HANA database. And what I want to show you is just the possibilities that you have in terms of adjusting the configuration of your system. So as said, we have some limitations here because of the trial instance, and that's being mentioned here. So a fixed storage size, for instance. But when you would run a provisioning for a system that is not running in the, or that is not supposed to run in the trial environment, but rather in a productive environment, there's more parameters that you can influence and change independently, or to somewhat with a fixed ratio influencing each other. And to make it clearer for our customers and users how the provisioning looks like, and also how which parameters are available and they need to consider when sizing a system and provisioning a system. We've created a sizing estimator that gives you basically the full picture of all the parameters that are important when provisioning a database system. Now, if we look at the data at the HANA database, first of all, and for instance on Microsoft Azure, then you can see that in here you have the possibility to virtually create a database system with a specific memory size. And when changing the memory size, the compute units are already adjusted so that you have the right ratios in here that you will then also find in the provisioning UI. When you're using, for instance, the native storage extension, I didn't jump or go into detail on that topic during my intro. You can basically also increase the storage. So if you, for instance, want to persist more data on disk instead of in memory within the HANA database, then you can do so to save cost via the native storage extension and the additional storage that you provide. And there is more possibilities existing. So as mentioned, if you want to run high availability scenarios with synchronous or asynchronous replications, then you also have the possibility to set these up in here and consider them in your calculation in the end. And this estimator is already giving you a capacity unit amount per month that you then can, let's say, translate into real cost based on the capacity unit price. So that is also let's say, a great way of how we can highlight the entire configuration possibilities for you without jumping into a production environment. But as said, for the trial mission, and that is what we recommend as a starting point, you're not bothered with this configuration as such. Okay. And now let's briefly take another look at the mission, wrapping all that up, and let's go through that and see what we've covered already. So the SAP HANA Database Basics is basically then the third pillar that you will walk through when working with the mission. And this is basically the content that I have covered today with slides. So walking you through the story of HANA being a single gateway to all data with all the integration and connectivity capabilities that we have. In the Database Explorer, I've briefly highlighted how to set up, for instance, remote connections to other sources and how to ingest data from other sources. Then we have a section on additional capabilities of the HANA database. So here we deep dive on the multi-model capabilities in HANA. I didn't mention that today in a lot of detail, but it's definitely worth. We also have a lot of interesting SAP samples on GitHub that you can play around with when discovering the service. I think there is definitely very much interesting content available on the topics of multimodal and also machine learning in HANA. And then we have a dedicated session on data security and protection in HANA, especially as the responsibilities are here to some degree split. So SAP is taking care of the system and landscape level security, but of course there is some responsibility still with the customer, and that's what we're explaining in here. And then you can see topics that we've covered, so the differences between the HANA database and HANA Cloud, the pricing, the provisioning, user management, as well as the topics of backup, recovery, security, and monitoring. And then later on, of course, we guide you through the steps that I've just shown a few minutes earlier on how to provision a service, how to work with a service, how to use the cockpit and the Database Explorer, as well as we give some, let's say, very first initial information about the Business Application Studio and how you use that in combination with SAP HANA Cloud. And then later on, of course, we also provide some transparency on monitoring and backups in HANA Cloud. And that's basically what the mission is all about. So I hope that this was giving you an overall impression and maybe kickstarted you with the mission a bit. I hope that you can now maybe walk through some of these chapters even quicker because you have some background understanding of the product and of the technologies. And I hope you found value in this garage session on SAP HANA Cloud. If this conversation today, but also like the overall mission made you curious, then please also take a look at our data lake. I think it's a great technology being a part of SAP HANA Cloud, especially for mass data storage scenarios, thinking about IoT, production data that you want to store. Is just one example where it really can benefit and complements HANA Cloud and the HANA database in a great manner. And we will add over time definitely more missions that relate to HANA Cloud, and you can already find more in the Discovery Center as well. And I think that's now actually it from my side. I would now open it up for questions if there are any. I hope I can answer them. I'm happy to try it.
Yeah, Thomas, there was just one question about clarifying if you can use HANA Studio for development.
Studio is not supported for SAP HANA Cloud, so there is no official support from our end. We clearly recommend using the Business Application Studio as the tool for development. There is also something coming up in terms of Visual Studio Code. So for Visual Studio Code, we're going to deliver a SQL integration that will allow you to execute SQL from the Visual Studio Code. To which extent we're extending the support of, let's say, database management tasks in Visual Studio Code is not yet defined. So just giving you full transparency on that.
Okay, so if anybody else has questions, feel free to ask them verbally or put them in the chat. Okay, so it looks like Thomas, that.
Oh, there's one more.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I can put the link to Discovery Center in the chat. I'll do that right now.
I have one question. This is Chinmay. We currently have our HANA database on AWS, but it is managed as if it's on-prem. What kind of effort do you see if we want to move to SAP HANA Cloud?
It depends on how you are using the database service, because there is some, let's say, concepts that we didn't carry on with SAP HANA Cloud. So with the release of the new product, we streamlined the code base and reworked some of the core assets and core aspects. And therefore, for some of the aspects, a migration or some rework is required. It's hard to give a general statement, but from our end, we are supporting migrations from, let's say, on-premise installations to SAP HANA Cloud with a dedicated team. And this team is typically performing pre-assessments first that give you insights into the effort of such a migration. So if that is of interest for you, I'm happy to share that contact with you. And then I believe the team is, will engage with you and talk about the specific requirements and also the needs for.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If there are some blogs or anything like that, also if you can put it in this, we are definitely thinking about it. We are using it as a sidecar as of now, where that is our data warehouse for enterprise data warehouse. Our main source is SAP, but we are sourcing from many other sources as well. So that's what we are using, and we are creating calculation views and using on the analytical tools like Tableau or SSE.
Do you happen to know which version of HANA you're running on the premises?
We have HANA 2.0.
Okay. Okay, I'll definitely share more details with you about that.
Thank you.
That shouldn't be a problem. You're welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you, Thomas. I think we're out of time. So we, like Thomas said, we hope you're encouraged to get started with the mission. And all missions are supported by coaches. So yeah, we hope you enjoy the HANA mission. And as I said earlier, we'll be back on January 12th to showcase the low-code, no-code AppGyver mission. So thank you very much, Thomas, for your expertise. And thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great end of year, and we'll see you in January.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Taras. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.